let's move on to some other defense mechanisms. So this is reaction formation, and it's a really interesting one. What happens is usually when I start my class, I do something like this. I say, okay, so what would you guys think if you saw a really big man in a really big truck with a really big dog, and everything about him is um, extreme masculinity? Um, then we talk about it, and I think a lot of people know, well, maybe he's compensating. Maybe he doesn't feel strongly about his masculinity, so he's playing it up a lot. And that's what reaction formation is Freud says that reaction when we take the opposite stance of our unconscious desires. So when you see somebody taking an extreme stance on something, like maybe prostitution is wrong, it's so wrong. How many times have we seen these politicians that are against, supposed to be these really clean guys, and then sure enough we find underneath that, oh, they seem to be so clean, but then we find all this dirt on them. Or when somebody is extremely against sexual orientation. Oh, this sexual orientation is wrong. This sexual orientation is wrong. And then we find out that sure enough that, oh, they have these unconscious desires. So you see this as themes in movies over and over again. Family Guy, no, not Family Guy, South Park. There's a funny one where there's this guy and he's so nice all day. To everyone, he's just the happiest guy. But then what he's doing at night is he's trolling around and putting all kinds of really negative comments on various websites, and that's what he spends his night doing. So whenever you see somebody taking an extreme stance on something, you might want to go, Or if somebody looks so perfect, everything about them is perfect, what are they covering up? Maybe, maybe not. Or is that just a rationalization, right? So reaction formation is when you take the opposite stance of your unconscious desires. You can see it on abortion sometimes. You can see it on, oh, I love my kids, and then maybe underneath they are neglecting them or doing something really terrible. Yeah, you see that sometimes with that syndrome where the women are taking their children to all the health care, and then the ones that are actually inflicting the pain on them. That's an extreme case. Let's move on to another one. All right, displacement. This one is, I think a lot of us use this one. I can relate to this one. It's when you redirect your unacceptable feelings to an easier or safer target. So, those of you that are wall punchers, that would be displacement. Those of you that are door slammers, that's what I am. Is I'm a door slammer. Is I get so mad. Maybe the kids are going crazy, and I get so mad, and to show that I'm mad, I slam the door because I don't want to slam them. I always tell people, I'm said, when you see somebody like driving in road rage, you need to leave them alone. I know it's tempting to like, oh, why are they driving like that? I'm going to go mess with them. But the thing is road rage is probably a form of displacement. They're very angry at their boss, or they're angry at their girlfriend, or they're angry at someone, but they can't act it out on that person. Maybe you've experienced this. Maybe a teacher or a boss has done something to you, and you can't yell back at them because that's not what we do in our society. But you go home and you take it out on your brothers or sisters, or you take it out on your parents, or maybe you take it out on your boyfriend or girlfriend. So, displacement is when you redirect your unacceptable feelings to an easier or safer target. I remember back in the day when I was doing coding on the computer, it was like if you got one little character wrong, the code wouldn't work, and it would drive me crazy because the kids were little at that time. And I remember getting so upset at the computer, I wanted to throw it through the window. And then one of the little kids came in and, can I have some chocolate milk? And I was like, oh, no. And it was tragic because I was mad at the computer, but I took it out on the kid, and I felt guilty, of course. But I think we all do this, and it's something that we really have to watch for. Okay, let's go to this one, regression. Have you noticed that a lot of these, they could be positive in a way? You could, like, did you look at rationalization and, like, let's say that you get fired from a job, that you could say, well, the universe has something better for me. It could be rationalization, or somebody breaks up with you and you say, oh, okay, well, that was the universe's way of getting rid of that person so a good person could come in. And taking the opposite stance of your unconscious desires, maybe you're really, really angry at somebody and you just say, oh, okay, well, I'm going to kill him with kindness, right? So all of these could be positive, they could be negative. Again, we all use these. Um, and so regression is an interesting one too. So regression is when you revert to a childlike state in order to satisfy the ids. So those of you that are whiners, those of you that curl up in your bed and suck your thumb, that would be regression. So, like when I said whiners, I meant like, does your voice change when you really get upset? Which isn't necessarily a bad thing because it could be worse. You could be like a person that just like verbally abuses people, but instead you're like, oh, I'm so sad that we can't do that. That's what I'm talking about there. So you curl up and you just cry yourself to sleep, or you start acting like a child. But here's an interesting one. I think that regression sometimes could be a great one to use. Like, for example, if you're so upset, you're just blinded by rage, what would happen if you went to the playground and just started swinging? Did you know that actually rocking and swinging stimulates the parasympathetic nervous system? And so it seems to have a calming effect on us. Or like, what if you were so mad at somebody and you just jumped up and down on your bed, or you went to your trampoline, like somebody's trampoline, and just started jumping and jumping and jumping? How about if you went and you started blowing bubbles? I feel like sometimes when we go back to a childlike state, it's like, how can you be angry? How can you let problems get in your way when you are back in that childlike state? So, regression is, remember, the id is the baby of the personalities. And so, regression is when you go back to that type of behavior and it kind of satisfies the id. It's like giving the id a chance to, okay, I want to express myself. You keep repressing me. You're saying no. So the ego says, okay, I'm just going to do something that makes the id happy. And maybe that will calm the war down. Okay, repression. I think a lot of us know about repression. We all do it. We all need to do it from time to time. When people say, "Oh, they have no filter," what they're talking about is they don't repress certain things that they need to repress sometimes. It's you have an uncomfortable feeling and then you stuff it in the unconscious. So you want to tell your boss, "Oh, you're driving me crazy by trying to micromanage me," or you want to tell your teacher like, "Oh my God, these lectures are way too long. Can you please just get to the point, or stop talking about this or stop talking about that?" But you have to repress that. There's certain situations where you have to swallow it. But and so it's good to just be quiet sometimes. Sometimes what gets us in big trouble is our mouth. So it's good to know when to say something and when to repress it. But what happens with repression is it can build up. So when they talk about bullying, that you've been repressing, and then eventually it creates this massive damage. Another thing that they think, that repression can cause depression because you're constantly holding back when you probably should be saying something. You should probably be standing up for yourself. They say that repression makes your immune system weaken, that you're holding things back, and that takes all your cells. It kind of gives your cells like a message like, you don't matter, you don't matter, you don't matter. So I do think that repression is good, but some of us overuse this. And so what I'm going to do here is I want to teach you this great model of communication. It's really powerful. I hope that you'll write it down. And if you ever get yourself into a situation where things are building up, and you're like, I have got to say something. I've got to say something, even if I get myself into trouble. And so here's the model. Okay, so whatever the behavior is, like let's pretend the boss micromanaging you is a problem. You say, this is what I see. Okay, so this is what I see, this is what I feel, and this is what I need. So the model of communication that I want to teach you is this is what I see, this is what I feel, and this is what I need. So notice that it's all about I. If you use this model, I really think that it can be used under any circumstance and it can come across in the right way. So let's do the boss micromanaging you. When you watch me, when you give me a job to do and then you watch me and ask me a lot of questions, I feel like you don't trust me and I feel self-conscious. I want to know what it will take for you to trust that I can do this job. Okay, so do you see how could the person be upset about that? You're not attacking them in any way. You're just saying when you ask me a lot of questions when I'm doing this job or are constantly watching me, I feel uncomfortable. I feel like you don't trust me. What I need to know is what can I do to develop your trust? Okay. How about somebody doesn't text back? I'm just trying to pick some ones that I hear in my classes. So someone repeatedly doesn't text back to you. Okay, so it would be something like this. When I text you and I don't hear back from you for hours at a time, it makes me feel like you're not thinking of me or you don't care about me. I need to know if there's a reason why you're not texting me back, or I would like you to try to text back as quickly as possible so that we can communicate. So let's try it again. When I text you and you don't return my text for hours at a time, it makes me feel like I can't communicate with you. I need you to try to return my text as soon as possible so that we can communicate. Do you see that that's is going to come across not attacking, but yet you're not repressing things? So I hope that that model helps you to stop your repression from building up, because it is good to repress things, but the repression can cause mental disorders, it can cause your immune system to weaken, and basically it can degrade relationships because relationships should be based on communication. So I'll say the model one more time. This is what I see, and you just say, this is what you see. Don't, and there's no judgment, okay? You don't say, you go on and on. You say, I listened to you for 30 minutes. I felt overwhelmed. I need you to just tell me what you need right very quickly. Okay, this is what I see. This is what I feel. This is what I need. Okay, let's go on to fantasy. So, all of you know probably what fantasy is. It's when we use our imagination to satisfy the id. Once again, this can be a great thing. Instead of you cheating on your boyfriend, you fantasize what it would be like to cheat on your boyfriend and you get excited, but then you still stay with him. Or how about somebody does you wrong and you fantasize about all the terrible things that you would do to them and it makes your id happy and it's able to let go a little bit. The problem is if you're living in a fantasy world, if you're, again, are you spending time fantasizing when you could actually be doing something productive? Like someone has made you mad. Do they even know that they made you mad? Is there something else you could be doing? So fantasy, once again, is use your imagination to satisfy the id. And the problem with fantasy is that when it's overused, as a matter of fact, fantasy can be kind of dangerous because when you think about it, what did all mass shootings start as? They started as a fantasy. What did a premeditated murder or premeditated rape start as? They started as a fantasy. So what happens is when you engage in these fantasies, they can get bigger and bigger and bigger. And if they feel obsessive, I hope that you'll go and you'll find someone to talk to them about. Because if you remember from the brain and behavior chapter, the right hemisphere is imagination. And the imagination is also your negative emotions. And the more you use them, they become like this snowball effect. And by talking about them and using some logic with them, then you can kind of ease that big snowball that's running around in your head. Okay, I believe that this is our final defense mechanism and it that I'm going to talk about. And it's sublimation. And this one tends to be a little bit more sexual. He connected sexuality with this one more than others, but most of the other ones also revolve around sexuality because remember the id is sex and aggression. So with sublimation, it's when we redirect our unacceptable feelings into a socially acceptable outlet. So a lot of people get sublimation and displacement confused. I'm totally with you. It sounds similar. But displacement is taking out a behavior on something safer, and sublimation is engaging in a behavior as kind of like a form, as an outlet, as like a channel outlet. So, for example, those of you that go and you box, you could say that you're displacing your anger onto the bag, but remember, he said it's very sexual. This one tends to be more sexual. So, for example, okay, here's a good example: is Freud's that he did a historical case study on Leonardo da Vinci, and he said that he was a repressed homosexual, and the reason why he was such an incredible Renaissance man and able to develop so many different inventions and excel in art and science and math because he was taking his sexual energy and he was putting it towards a socially acceptable outlet. As many of you know, many churches have required the nuns and the monks to be celibate because they say taking that sexual energy and rechannel it towards more socially acceptable endeavors. If you didn't think about sex so much and took all of that energy and put it towards your schoolwork, do you think you'd do better? I don't know. I'm just kidding about that. I don't know. Maybe not. But sometimes I see people in the gym and they're working out for 2.5 hours twice a day. I see them in the morning, I see them at night, and I'm like, whew, I don't know if they're going for a bodybuilding competition or what, but I kind of doubt that they have a relationship. I mean, if of course, if they're working for a bodybuilding championship, then yes, we can see that. However, if they're just run of the mill and working out all the time, then Freud would say that this might be a form of sublimation, that they have this pent up sexual energy, and then what they're doing it is they're channeling it into working out all the time. Okay, so this concludes our presentation on defense.